Before the Borders, Episode 3, History of Two-Spirited and Native Americans being Israelites. History is not just a record of events. It's not just a record of events. It's a record of collisions. Collisions between empires and nations. Between swords and ceremonies. Between beliefs about who is sacred and beliefs about who is not. Tonight we step into two of those sacred beliefs. Is two-spirited sacred? And who are the Israelites today? This is Before the Borders.
Before the lie was told, before the flag was planted, before violence was blessed and called destiny, before colonizers arrived claiming new land with old blood on their hands, before survival meant fighting extinction, this land was not discovered. It was invaded. This is Before the Borders.
Hey, today on Before the Borders, we got some good stuff for y'all. Y'all know we do history around here. We do history around here, right? And you know what's crazy? People don't like history. People like to believe lies. They like to believe what their grandmama told them while she was drunk, that they are not Israelites. They are a Ute. I had one sister. She replied to one of my videos and she started talking crap. So you know what I did? I jumped on one of her lives. And I'm like, hey, we the Israelites. Let's have a conversation. She said, okay, let's have a conversation. Now, mind you, her live was only me and some other dude. She was on there making fry bread or something. And I'm like, hey, let's talk about nationality. She automatically said that you black people think that y'all are everybody. I said, dang. I said, we got the books. We got the history. The Bible proves it, that the Native American Indians are, in fact, the Israelites, according to the Bible. And not just the Bible. We stand on the book, but we got history books to prove what we're saying. All right? So, we're going to get into what two-spirited is. Some of y'all know, some of y'all don't. So we're going to get into it. Pull it up. We're going to get into what two-spirited is. I'm going to read it from my phone. So this is two-spirited, Wikipedia. Two-spirited, also known as two-spirit or occasionally two-spirited, or abbreviated as twos, especially in Canada, is a contemporary pan-Indian umbrella term used by some indigenous North Americas to describe Native people who fulfill a traditional third gender or other gender variant social role in their communities. Coined in 1990 as a primarily ceremonial term promoting community recognition, in recent years, more individuals have taken to self-identifying as two-spirit. Two-spirit is a term and concept. It's neither used nor accepted universally in Native American cultures. Indigenous cultures that have traditional roles for gender non-conforming people have names in their own indigenous languages for these people and the roles they fill in their communities. The initial intent in coining the term was to differentiate indigenous concepts of gender and sexuality from those of non-native lesbians and gays. And to replace the pejorative, anthropological terms that were still in wide use. Although the term two-spirited has been controversial since its adoption, it has experienced more academic and social acceptance than the term burdock, don't know what that means, which it was coined to replace. The government of Canada officially uses twos LGBTQI+, as an alternative to the established acronym of LGBTQI, sometimes shortened to TWO's LGBT, that jacked me up, or a similar variant. So basically, Two-Spirited is going into transgenderism. Is that a word? Transgenderism? Right. I like this washout right there. That's dope. Washout's pretty dope. So that term, that's what it's going into. All right. So we got to ask ourselves, Two-Spirited, is it sacred? Is it sacred? Is it something that our Creator instilled in us to keep or to practice? So I got this book. I got this book here. I got a little history. It's called Reclaiming Two Spirits: Sexuality, Spiritual Renewal, and Sovereignty in Native America by Gregory D. Smithers. So, as y'all know on Before the Borders, we deal with history. We deal with proven facts, history, and accounts of the so-called Native American Indians. So, let's go into the book. So this is the cover. We're going to read it. Watch this. Before 1492, hundreds of indigenous communities across North America included people who were called Akiskasi, Miati, Okitsatikwi, or one of hundreds of other tribally specific identities. These individuals identified as neither male nor female, but as both. It says this is before the 1400s, which means what? This was before colonization. I want y'all to keep this in mind. This was before the conquistadors and the Spaniards stepped foot on what we know as today as America. Now watch this. After European colonizers invaded Indian country, centuries of violence and systematic persecution followed, imperiling the existence of people who today call themselves Two Spirits, an umbrella term that started being used in 1990 when a group of lesbians, gay, bisexual, and transgender natives met at an annual gathering searching for language that would celebrate indigenous diversity throughout North America. They decided on Two Spirits, which is derived from the Northern Algonquin word Nizmaniduwag. Yeah, that sounds weird. It denotes the existence of feminine and masculine qualities in a single person. Covered 500 years of history, and using archaeological evidence, art, written sources, and oral storytelling, Reclaiming Two Spirits decolonizes the history of gender and sexuality in Native North America. So we can claim to be two-spirited homosexuals, lesbians, but it's wrong to claim to be Israelites. That's crazy, ain't it? That's some crazy stuff. Examining 16 images that reveal two-spirit history and culture, historian Gregory D. Smithers takes readers on a harrowing journey into indigenous communities disrupted by colonial massacres, abductions, and inquisitions. The stories reveal how the authors of colonialism's written archives used violence and labels such as hermaphrodite and burdite to both denigrate and erase two-spirit people from indigenous history. But as Smithers shows, the colonizers failed in the face of heroic acts of indigenous resistance. This is history that is showing how the Native American Indians fought for the lifestyle of two-spirit. And to this day, we say, well, the colonizers came. Yes, I said we. When the colonizers came, they took our culture of two-spirit and named it LGBTQ. They see the word or the term or whatever, the acronym, whatever, LGBTQ as erasure, indigenous erasure. But they mad at me. Mad at me for breaking out history that the Native Americans are Israelites. So let's go further into the book. We'll go further into the book. This is the prologue. Page 28. Prologue. Prologue. Whatever you gonna say. I was raised black. This is the prologue. Second paragraph to the bottom. All right. The questions I asked about colonialism's written archives and how they represent or just as revealingly ignore two-spirit people in their histories are informed by two-spirit storytelling, art, politics, and a decolonial reading of sources. Let me give you a sense of what I'm talking about. To do so, I want to transport you back in time to a now foreign world. Now that she said, well, you know what I got to do? I got to give you an understanding of what I'm saying. We're going to go back in time to the 1500s. The tale I'm about to share with you is a true story of European invasion, violence, and deep trauma. It's also a story that helps us understand the importance of reclaiming and renewing two-spirit histories in our own time. You see that? Reclaiming. You should be reclaiming who you are. You need to reclaim yourself as the Israelites. But look at the story begins after a long day of work. As they had done on untold occasions, a small group of Kuchindado Indians toiled through the daylight hours, tending to their crops and working together to complete tasks essential to the community's well-being. It had always been this way. No one could recall life being any different. The Kuchindados, forgive me if I'm saying it wrong, I know I am, worked and talked together, ate meals from a common pot together, and shared in ceremonial traditions. Life seemed balanced, orderly. People who performed the gender roles of women used skills refined over generations to raise crops and prepare food to nourish the community. Those who identify with more masculine social identities also had roles to fulfill. You see this? Those who identify with masculine, those who identify with feminine. Stay with me now, I'm getting somewhere. They received instructions from women on how to work the fields, in addition to hunting game and accompanying women and harvesting wild fruits, nuts, and seeds. This work helped to maintain a sense of equilibrium in the world that the Kuchindados shared with one another and with their more than human kin. In Kuchindado villages nestled along the southwestern coast of what is today Texas, people lived with the land, not on it. Individuals formed relationships that stood as testaments to the importance of kinship, collaboration, and community cohesion. Let's jump down. We're going to jump down to where it says, and then a new threat arrived. In 1527, Alvar Nunez Cabaza de Vaca stepped onto land that Europeans referred to as the New World. De Vaca, I'm probably saying that wrong too, was part of the Narvaez expedition, one of many waves of Spanish invasion that swept through the Caribbean and the Americas during the 16th century. The Spaniards began their incursions into indigenous communities at Santo Domingo, or Dominican Republic, home to the Taino people, Israelites, by the way. We're going to get that too. From there, De Vaca traveled with the Narvaez expedition to Cuba, Manessa, and finally to Florida, Reuben. When the Spaniards arrived in mainland North America, they clung to the coastline of the Gulf region. They were curious but cautious. The Spaniards wanted to find riches, but they did not want to die. And yet death loomed large in the 16th century, whether one was Indian or European. For native people along the Gulf Coast, Spanish invasions meant the spread of diseases and outbreaks of violence, factors that further destabilized populations and hastened political changes that sent growing numbers of indigenous people inland in search of refuge. Now, stay with me. We get somewhere. We get somewhere. I'm there like, what this dude talking about? This is Before the Borders. Watch this. Page 30. Devaka wasn't looking for refuge, but he couldn't avoid his own mortality. Hunger and fear shadowed Devaka and every other European invader in the Americas during the 16th century. Devaka's anxiety intensified as his journey continued. While traveling through Florida, a band of native warriors detained the Spaniard and held him captive. In an age when male captives in this part of North America routinely met prolonged and painful deaths, Devaka may well have assumed the end of his life was near. Now, I'm going to jump down. We're going to jump down to the nature, which is the fourth green mark down. The nature of what Devaka thought he saw was colored by his religious beliefs, his orders from the Spanish crown, and his heterosexuality. If, in contrast, a group of Native American travelers unrelated to the Cochintados had entered these small village communities, they would not have seen anything out of the ordinary. However, what Devaka believed he saw and how he described it caused as much violence to the historical representation of the Cochintados as assaults with cannons and harquebuses could inflict. This man said, what I saw was worse than the murders I've committed against these people. Watch this. Like scores of other European invaders, Devaka expressed shock to discover families that included a number of impotent, effeminate men. This is the white man. Said what he saw the Native American community was effeminate men. Devaka claimed he had seen men married to other men. Devaka, a devout Catholic, was disturbed. These were unmanly men. He reported that these men go about dressed as women and do women's tasks and shoot with a bow and carry great burdens. That they are huskier than any other man and taller. Devaka passed over this encounter with noticeable abruptness. He offered little in the way of analysis, reflection, and certainly no empathy. Something at odds with his historical reputation as a man with a nuanced appreciation of Native American cultures, Devaka might have felt moral repugnance at the sight of men married to men. But his captivity among the Florida Indians taught him the importance of strategic silences if he wanted to continue to live. Jump down. There's more to this scene. However, then Devaka was willing to let on. Like other European invaders and the Euro-Americans who came after them in subsequent centuries, narrative silences mingle with logical contradictions and moral judgments in an attempt to dismiss, judge, or eliminate gender-fluid Native people from the historical record. The written records of settler colonial societies in the northern half of the Americas, from Panama to Alaska, present only fragmentary written evidence of the individuals we know today as Two-Spirit people. That's the book. The white man said when he came to the side of the world, he was disgusted to see men married to men. Was this a custom of the Native American Indians? Or was it something that we brought along with us? What's this? Two-spirited. Let's see what God says about that. Let's see what your Creator says about this. This is the book of Isaiah, chapter 5, and we're going to read verse 13. Therefore, my people are gone into captivity because they have no knowledge. and their honorable men are famished, and their multitude dried up with thirst. What is that knowledge? That knowledge is the laws of God. Let's prove that. Malachi chapter 2 and verse 7. This is what that knowledge is that the Lord says caused us to go into captivity for not having. For the priest's lips shall keep knowledge, and they shall seek the law at his mouth, for he is the messenger of the Lord of hosts. So what is that knowledge? That knowledge is the laws of God. Why did we go into captivity? Because we were breaking the laws of God. On this land, we were breaking God's laws. That's why the 1500s, the 1400s, the 1600s, the Lord sent conquistadors and Spaniards to do what? Take us into captivity. To destroy our names, destroy our nationality, destroy, what did it say? Kill the Indian, save the man. Colonization, boarding schools. Let's see what God says about two-spirited people. You can't judge me. Where you read that at? This is the book of Leviticus, chapter 18, and verse 22. Thou shalt not lie with mankind as with womankind. It is abomination. Two-spirited, a man laying with a man, is an abomination. A woman laying with a woman is an abomination. That's what God says. That's what the Lord says. I know some of y'all are going to be mad. They're going to be mad when they see this. You can talk about anything, but don't talk about two-spirited people. Let's keep reading. Verse 24. Defile not, oh, wait a minute. Verse 27 is what I want. For all these abominations have the men of the land done, which were before you, and the land is defiled. That the land spew not you out. Also, when ye defile it, as it spewed out the nations that were before you. What happened? Right here in America, we were conquered. The land spewed us out. Why? Because we were breaking God's commandments. This isn't our original land. Jerusalem is our homeland. The Lord gave us a little plot over here to try to get right. But what do? We say, it's okay to be two-spirited. It's okay for a man to sleep with a man. The white man came over here and said he saw nothing but effeminate men. Damn. That's crazy. Verse 28. That the land spew not you out, also, when you defile it, as it spewed out the nations that were before you. Verse 29. For whosoever shall commit any of these abominations, even the souls that commit them, they shall be cut off from among their people. That's what happened. That's what happened. Verse 30. Therefore shall ye keep mine ordinance, that ye commit not any one of these abominable customs which were committed before you, and that ye defile not yourselves therein. I am the Lord your God. So how does God feel about two-spirited? The Lord tells you not to defile yourselves in this abomination. You cannot, as a man, sleep with a man. You cannot, as a woman, sleep with a woman. Watch this. Because somebody said, oh, well, I'm not two-spirited. I just believe I'm a woman. 1 Corinthians 6 and verse 9. Know ye not that the unrighteous should not inherit the kingdom of God? Be not deceived, neither fornicators, nor idolaters, nor adulterers, nor effeminate. You can't even act like a woman. And that's what's wrong with the Native American community. There is no men these days. We've been to the reservations. I've been to reservations. I've spoke to elders, to the older generation of women, to the young generation of women, and they all say the same thing. There is no men. They all say the same thing. The men are drunk. The men are high. The men don't work. They're idle. They're not doing a doggone thing for the restoration of their people. If you offended, you should ask yourself why. Because the remnant will understand what I'm saying. Let's keep going. So, I'm going to leave the two-spirit alone. All right. Now we're going to dive into the other collision. Who are the Israelites? And are the Native Americans Israelites today? We're going to dive into it. Y'all know we got the books. We got the books. So this book that I'm about to go into is called Lost Tribes and Promised Lands: The Origins of American Racism by Ronald Sanders. All right, let's get into the book. Hey, y'all like the screen. Give me some hearts. Hey, we trying to push this thing. We trying to reach out to the so-called Native American Indians, all right? Before the borders, let them know that we here. So let's go into the book. We'll go to page 363. A lost tribe discovered in New York, all right? And we, like I said, hey, y'all can get these books on Amazon. We will do the research for you. We read the books. We buy the books. We read the books. We go throughout the books and let you know where you're at in the book. All you gotta do is buy it. Find what we say, page at, chapter, verse, script, line, and just read it. You ain't gotta, hey, you don't even have to use your time to research anymore. We'll do it for you, just to prove the point of who you are. Here we go. Chapter 30, A Lost Tribe Discovered in New York. September 1644. You ever notice how all these dates is always the 1400s, 1500s, 1600s, 1700s? The reason why they don't let or like blacks, Hispanics to read anything is because when we come across these types of books, the reason why is so far 1600s, 1500s, because our forefathers back then, they still knew who they were. They still knew who they were. It's a gap of historic intelligence with our time and our ancestors' time. There's a gap. Who caused that gap? The white man caused that gap. Got you thinking you Apache. Got you thinking you Blackfoot. Got you thinking you Cherokee, Choctaw, Chickasaw, Seminole Indian. Got you thinking you Mexican, Puerto Rican, Cuban. It's a gap in history. Here we go. In September 1644, a Portuguese Morano named Antonio de Montesinos arrived in Amsterdam after having lived for some years in South America and proceeded to tell the leaders of the recently established Jewish community there a story that caused them to think of him as a latter-day Eldad the Danite. 2.5 years before, he told them while traveling in the wild mountains of Quanto, he had heard some of his Indian guides remark that the natives of that country deserved all the suffering they had undergone at the hands of the Spaniards. When he asked them to explain why they thought such a thing, they had replied mysteriously that it was because we so badly treated a holy people, the greatest in the world. Nothing more had been offered by them on this point. But later, in the same conversation, Francisco, one of the Indian guides, had declared that his own countrymen would be avenged upon the Spaniards in time anyway, by means of a people now hidden The two references apparently were the same people, but Montezinos, not seeing their full meaning at that moment, had put the whole matter out of mind for the time being. Upon his return to Cartagena, the Judaizing Montezinos had found himself accused by the Inquisition and put in prison. Praying for salvation in his cell one day, he was reciting what was by then a standard formula among New World Muranos. Blessed be the name of the Lord, who has not made me idolater, a barbarian, a Negro, an Indian. When suddenly he stopped, those Indians, he told himself, they are Hebrews. Pondering this thought, incredulously, and yet with growing conviction, he resolved that if he ever was released, he would seek out the Indian Francisco and try to learn the truth. Montezinos' story, unclear as to the circumstances of his incarceration, is equally unclear as to those of his release. But released he was, and he immediately went to Francisco, revealing himself as a Jew. Montezinos proclaimed his conviction that Francisco's hidden people were of the same race as he. Would Francisco lead him to them? The two men were soon back to the rugged mountains in which Francisco had made his initial revelation, marching relentlessly for a week before they finally came to a halt. It was a Saturday. Montezinos makes a point of telling us, and they had come to a river larger than the Douro. Are there echoes of the Sambiaton in all of this? Here, Francisco announced, is where your brothers will be seen. I think he mentioned it was a Saturday. Sabbath. Waving a banner high in the air, the Indian guide soon was greeted by a puff of smoke far beyond the other bank of the river. In response to his signal, the two men waited. Eventually, a canoe appeared, bearing 3 men and a woman, all of them Indians, to the place where Francisco and Montezinos were standing at the water's edge. To give y'all a little bit of context, one of these guys is a white man, and the other one is a Native American Indian. The white man went to him to be his guide. Waving a banner high in the air, the Indian guide soon was greeted by a puff of smoke far beyond the other bank of the river. In response to his signal, 2 men waited. Eventually, a canoe appeared, bearing 3 men and a woman, all of them Indians, to a place where Francisco and Montezinos were standing at the water's edge. The woman got off and spoke to Francisco in an Indian tongue that Montezinos could not understand, although he could perceive that he was being identified in the conversation. She then turned to her male companions to explain the situation. Upon hearing her words, they rose, went over to Montezinos, and to his utter astonishment said, Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Ehad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. They had recited in Hebrew the fundamental credo of Judaism. How do these Native Americans know the credo of Judaism? How? Somebody answer that. How did the Native Americans know the credo of Judaism? In Hebrew, hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one, as you read in the book of Deuteronomy. This is crazy. Watch this. A brief conversation then ensued in their common ancestral tongue, according to Montezinos, whose fluency in it is almost as perplexing to the reader of his narrative as is that of his 3 mysterious new companions. They told him that they were themselves of the tribe of Reuben, and that the tribe of Joseph, Ephraim, lived on an island nearby. Come on, y'all. This is some good stuff. It's some good stuff. This some history. We reading these things in the books. This was what, 1500s? That our ancestors were calling themselves by the exact tribe name that you read in the book of Genesis, chapter 49. The 12 tribes of Israel. The tribe of Reuben. It says the tribe of Joseph was nearby on an island. Ephraim is Joseph. The so-called Puerto Ricans are Ephraim. The island of what? Hispaniola. Watch this. The day when they were at least to issue forth into the world was coming soon, they explained. But in the meantime, they could not allow visitors to cross over to them. They were willing to make an exception in the near future, however, on account of their need for education. For, though they spoke Hebrew, they could not read or write it. Would Montezino send them 12 bearded men to be their teachers? He said he would. The 4 strangers returned to their canoe, paddled back across the river, and disappeared from view. Francisco told Montesinos all he knew about these people from his own traditions. His ancestors, to their internal shame, had indeed made war on them and persecuted them. Only the sorcerers of his tribe had perceived that they were a special people and had given warning that they should be left alone. The God of these children of Israel is the true God, they had said, and everything inscribed on their tablets is true. At the end of the days, there will be lords of all the nations of the earth. One nation will come bringing many things to this land, and after we have all been provided for, these children of Israel will go forth from where they now are and reign over the whole earth, as they once did. With this final flourish, Montesinos had turned his tale of the lost tribes into a bit of a propaganda for the Dutch conquest of Brazil at the same time. We got the books. We got the history. We got the proof. That's proven the Native American Indians are Israelites. If this is false, why was it hidden? You gotta ask yourself, if this is false, why was it hidden? Customs persist longer than governments. Say it again. Customs persist longer than governments. Language patterns outlive empires. Lineage doesn't care what a map says. When culture survives, but names change, that is not disappearance, it's survival. Now watch this. We got one more book for y'all. This is called The View of the Hebrews. The View of the, right, we got receipts. We got receipts, bruh. For real, we got receipts, all right? This is called The View of the Hebrews, or the Tribes of Israel in America by Ethan Smith. So we're gonna go inside this book and watch what we have here. So this is chapter Chapter 3, the present state of Judah and Israel. So this is talking point 2. This is talking about the Native American Indians, all right? Their language appears clearly to be Hebrew. In this, Dr. Edwards, Mr. Adar, and others were agreed. Remember, we read Adar, James Adar, last week. The history of the American Indians. That's what he's referring to. And others were agreed. Dr. Edwards, after having a good acquaintance with their language, gave his reasons for believing it to have been originally Hebrew. Both, he remarks, are found without prepositions and are formed with prefixes and suffixes. A theme probably known to no other language. And he shows that not only the words, but the construction of phrases in both have been the same, their pronouns as well as their nouns. Dr. Edwards' remarks are manifestly from the Hebrew. Mr. Adar is confident in the fact that their language is Hebrew, and their laconic, bold, and commanding figures of speech, he notes, as exactly agreeing with the genius of the Hebrew language. He says that after living 40 years among them, he obtained such knowledge of the Hebrew idiom of the language that he viewed the event of their having for more than 2 millenaries, did I say that right? And without the aid of literature, preserved their Hebrew language so pure to be but little short of a miracle. Related to the Hebraism of the figures, Mr. Dar gives the following instance from an address of a captain to his warriors going to battle. I know that your gums are burning in your hands. Your tomahawks are thirsting to drink the blood of your enemies. Your trusty arrows are impatient to be upon the wing, and lest delay should burn your hearts in longer, I give you the cool, refreshing word. Join their holy ark in a way to cut off the devoted enemy. A table of words and phrases is furnished by Dr. Benedot Adar and others, with several added from good authority to show how clearly the Indian language is from Hebrew. Some of these Indian words are taken from one tribe and some from another. In a long savage state, destitute of all aid from letters, a language must roll and change. It is strange that after a lapse of 2,500 years, a single word should, among such people, be preserved the same. But the hand of providence is strikingly seen in this, perhaps to bring that people to life. Now watch the next phase. It's going to blow your mind. The following may afford a specimen of the evidence on this part of the subject. On the left, you got English words. The middle is Indian words, and the right is the Hebrew. Watch how closely they sound. English, Jehovah. Indian, Yahweh. Hebrew, Jehovah. English, God. Indian, Ali. Hebrew, Ali. I don't speak Hebrew, by the way. English, Jah. Indian, Yah or Wah. Hebrew, Jah. English, Shiloh. Shiloh. Hebrew, Shiloh. English, heavens. The Indian word for heavens is Chimim. The Hebrew word is Shemim. English word for father in the Indian is Abba. In the Hebrew, Abba. English word for man in the Indian is Ish or Ishte. In Hebrew, Ish. Woman, Ishto. In the Hebrew, Ishto. When y'all examine this right here, how closely the Indian word is to the Hebrew word. Remember, which came first? The Hebrew came first. The English didn't come before the Indian language. The Indians were not speaking English when the conquistadors and the Spaniards came to this side of the world. So who taught these Native Americans Hebrew? That's the question. Who taught them Hebrew? Why do their words resemble the words of Hebrew that no other nation can say their words fit Hebrew? The Chinese, I don't sound like no damn Hebrew. No other nation. No other nation. So, we ain't got to read the whole thing, but y'all can look at it. Y'all can look at it and see that the words that the name makers were using resemble the same words that the Hebrew says. I'm going to read it again. Language patterns outlive empires. Lineage doesn't care what a map says. When culture survives but name change, that's not disappearance, that's survival. Deuteronomy 28. Why did our names change? Why did our language change? Why did we forget everything that our ancestors instilled in us? Why? Deuteronomy 28, verse 15. But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do all his commandments and all his statutes, which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. A curse is an evil thing. A curse is a bad thing. We're going to jump to a curse. And thou shalt, verse 37, and thou shalt become an astonishment, two-spirited. That's an astonishment. A proverb, Native American, that's a proverb. Calling yourselves Apache, Cherokee, that's a proverb. And a byword among all the nations, whither the Lord shall lead thee. What's a byword? Being called outside of your God-given name. That is what happened to the Native American Indians. History didn't start with colonization. It started long before the borders. This is before the borders, and the remnant will remain.